In the early hours of May 27th, 1991, the streets of Milwaukee were quiet in the way cities get when most people are asleep and the world feels briefly paused. That silence was broken when a woman looked out of her window and saw something that didn't make sense. A naked boy was staggering down the road. He was bleeding, he was disoriented, and he was crying. At first, the women who saw him thought he must be drunk, but as he got closer, they realized this wasn't intoxication. The boy looked terrified. His head was injured. His body was trembling. He could barely stand. When they tried to speak to him, his responses were confused and broken, as if he didn't fully understand where he was or how he had gotten there. The women called 911. When police arrived, they were met by a chaotic scene. 3 women were surrounding the boy, trying to shield him, trying to calm him, trying to explain that something was very wrong. The boy was later identified as Konerak Sinthasomphone. He was 14 years old. 14. He had escaped from an apartment just blocks away, belonging to a man named Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer approached the officers calmly. He didn't run. He didn't panic. He smiled politely and explained that the boy was his 19-year-old boyfriend. According to him, the boy had been drinking heavily, they'd had an argument, and the boy had wandered outside in a drunken state. He said it was a misunderstanding, a lover's quarrel, nothing more. The women protested immediately. They told the officers the boy was clearly a child. They pointed out the injuries. They begged them not to listen to Dahmer. One of the women explicitly said she believed the boy was in danger, but Officer John Balcerzak dismissed them. He later described the women as overreacting and hysterical. He told them to step back. He instructed them to stop interfering. And then, without checking identification, without running a background check, without calling an ambulance, without separating the boy from Dahmer for questioning, he made a decision that would become one of the most catastrophic failures in American policing history. He escorted Konerak back into Dahmer's apartment. The door closed behind them. Within minutes, Jeffrey Dahmer murdered the boy. Later confessions revealed that Konerak had already been partially lobotomized before escaping. Dahmer had drilled into his skull and injected acid into his brain in an attempt to create a living zombie. The reason the boy seemed confused, disoriented, unable to communicate clearly was not drunkenness. It was severe brain injury. All of this could have been discovered if police had stayed even 10 minutes longer. Inside that apartment were human remains, photographs of dismembered bodies, a refrigerator containing body parts, a criminal history that included previous sexual assault of a minor, a child who was tragically Konerak's older brother. But none of it was checked, because Dahmer was calm, because he was polite, because he sounded reasonable, because the victims were young, vulnerable, and easy to dismiss. And if you're finding this story unsettling so far, take a moment here. Stories like this are uncomfortable for a reason. If you believe cases like this deserve to be remembered and talked about, you can support this channel by liking the video, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and subscribing. It helps keep these conversations alive and ensures stories like Konerak's aren't forgotten. In the months that followed, Dahmer would go on to kill more victims. 13 lives, by conservative estimates, could have been saved if the police had done their job that night. When Dahmer was finally arrested later in 1991, the story exploded across the country. People focused on the brutality, the cannibalism, the horror of the crimes. But buried beneath the headlines was another story, quieter, more uncomfortable, and far more relevant than most people wanted to admit. The story of how authority failed completely. When the Milwaukee Police Department investigated the incident, Balcerzak and the other responding officers were fired. Public outrage was immense. The case became a symbol of institutional negligence, homophobia, racism, and victim blaming. For a moment, it seemed like there would be accountability. That moment didn't last. Balcerzak appealed the decision, and he won. The officers were reinstated with full back pay. No criminal charges were filed. No lasting disciplinary action remained on record. Balcerzak didn't just return to the force, he rose through its ranks. Eventually, he became president of the Milwaukee Police Association. The same man whose decisions sent a child back to his killer now represented police officers citywide. When asked about the incident years later, Baltazak expressed no remorse. He maintained that he acted reasonably given the information available to him. He framed the situation as an unfortunate misunderstanding rather than a bevetting failure to protect a vulnerable child. This is where the story becomes harder to dismiss as a simple mistake, because the warning signs were everywhere. The boy was naked, he was bleeding, he couldn't communicate clearly. Witnesses begged for intervention. Dahmer's explanation didn't align with the physical evidence. And even a basic identity check would have revealed that Konerak was a missing minor. The failure wasn't subtle, it was systemic. This case forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about how violence is allowed to continue, not just because of evil individuals, but because of the systems that protect them, excuse them, and enable them. Jeffrey Dahmer is remembered as a monster. His name has become shorthand for horror, but monsters rarely operate alone. They rely on indifference, on disbelief, on the assumption that someone else will intervene. In this case, someone did intervene, and then Chen chose to undo it. Konerak Sinthasomphone's family later received a civil settlement from the city of Milwaukee, but no amount of money could restore what was taken. His name is often overshadowed by Dahmer's, reduced to a footnote in someone else's notoriety. But Konerak wasn't just a victim of a serial killer. He was a victim of authority failure, a victim of a system that prioritized comfort over caution, reputation over responsibility, and assumptions over evidence. When people ask how serial killers go undetected for so long, this case offers a disturbing answer. It's not always because they're brilliant or invisible. Sometimes it's because the people meant to stop them refuse to listen. They dismiss victims as unreliable. They silence witnesses. They trust appearances over facts. And when they're wrong, the consequences aren't theirs to bear. They belong to the dead. Even today, this case echoes in discussions about policing, accountability, and who gets believed. It challenges the idea that harm only comes from those who commit violence directly. Because harm can also come from decisions made in minutes, decisions rooted in bias, complacency, or fear of embarrassment. John Baltazak never stabbed anyone. He never dismembered a body. He never drilled into a skull. But his choice handed a child back to death. And that is why this story still matters. Not because of how shocking it is, but because of how familiar it feels. Because somewhere right now, someone is being dismissed. Someone is being told they're overreacting. Someone is being sent back into danger because the person they're escaping from looks normal enough. If stories like this made you pause, think, or feel unsettled, let me know in the comments. Your engagement helps this channel grow, so remember to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. The most chilling part of this case isn't what happened in Dahmer's apartment, it's what happened on the street, when help arrived and failed.